Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm the TOEFL expert at magoosh.com, and today, here in this video, I want to give you a schedule for preparing for the TOEFL, so you know what to study every week. This schedule is 1 month long, 4 weeks. If you have more or less time, simply stretch the schedule or shorten it. This can work for 2 weeks or it can work for 2 months. And if you want more detailed schedules, go to magoosh.com. We have schedules with daily assignments that tell you what to do every single day you study. But in this video, I'm going to explain by weeks. So there are 4 weeks, and in each week, I will give you 4 goals. So there will be 4 goals in the first week, 4 in the second, etc. Okay. Now, what do you need to study here? What are your materials? First, we're going to use the official free material. I'll show you that in week 1. Now, there is only a little bit of official free material. We will actually finish the official free material after week 1. So what about weeks 2, 3, and 4? Well, you're going to need other sources of practice questions and, more importantly, sources of strategies. I recommend, of course, using Magoosh TOEFL, but you can use other books or other resources for those strategies. That's your choice. But check out magoosh.com, TOEFL.magoosh.com, for some practice questions and strategies that you can use for weeks 2, 3, and 4. And finally, we will use some TOEFL flashcards. Magoosh's free TOEFL flashcards are free, so you can study with those on your phone. I will use those every week of the schedule. You could use another vocabulary source, but to be honest, I think ours are the best. They have the most common words for the TOEFL. There are 600 of them, and again, they're free, so just use those. All right, now let's get started with week 1. In week 1, we're going to learn the very basics of the test. You're going to get exposure to all parts of the TOEFL, but we're not going to do too much practice. It will be a lot of learning of the general test. All right, so our first goal is vocabulary. Let's get the basic vocabulary from Magoosh's TOEFL flashcards. I want you to learn the first 4 decks. Master the first 4 decks. Now, each of these decks is about 50 words, so that's 200 words. That's okay. Many of these words you will already know. They are relatively basic. Next, our second goal for the week is to use all of the free official material from ETS. There are 3 sources of official material on ETS's website that are free. There are 2 types of PDFs and 1 software, 1 program that you can download and use, and all of these questions will represent everything that you might see on the TOEFL. You'll see examples of speaking task 1, examples of speaking task 6, examples of both types of essay, examples of every kind of reading question. Your goal in doing these questions is not to focus too much on mistakes. It is to learn the format of the test. Next, your third goal is to identify some weaknesses. 2 weaknesses. Where did you have trouble? What kinds of questions gave you trouble on that official material? Was it the speaking section, for example? Was it taking notes on the listening section? That's a very common trouble. Was it the timing of the reading section? Find specific areas, specific skills that caused you trouble on that official material so you know what to focus on in the upcoming weeks. And your 4th goal is to study strategies and tips for those weaknesses. We have video lessons and blog posts and more material on magoosh.com that explains strategies for every kind of difficulty that students have with the TOEFL. There are note-taking strategies, for example, or strategies for timing the reading section so you don't run out of time. Whatever your weakness is, whatever your troubles are, we can help you. You might also find some strategies and explanations in your TOEFL books that can help you get over those weaknesses. Okay, now let's move on to next week, week 2. This week we're going to do more practice, a lot more practice, and really specifically look at small errors and how to avoid them. But first, let's do some vocabulary practice. The next 4 decks in Magush's TOEFL flashcards are a bit more difficult, but I want you to study all 4 of those. Try to master all of those 4 decks. Your second goal is to do a full practice test. Now, I don't mean to do this test in one sitting. You don't need to sit down and take a test in 4 hours. No, you can break up the practice test over days, because you're going to spend time looking at every single wrong answer. You want to do that very carefully. That will be goal 3. I'll talk about that more in a moment. But for goal 2 is simply doing the practice test. Where do you get the practice test? Well, the 2 best resources you can get this from are official books. ETS has an official guide or books of official practice tests that you can use, or better still, Magoosh TOEFL. Goal 3 is to review every wrong answer and figure out why you got it wrong. What can you do to avoid that problem in the future? And every time you have a wrong answer and you identify what you can improve, write it. Write it in a notebook or in notes. Find out what your problem is and write it down so you can review it later. Goal 4 is to review your essays and spoken answers from last week. From the official free material in week 1, you're going to grade your answers, grade your essays, and grade your spoken answers. If you didn't record them, then you can use the material from this week. Now, in order to grade your answers, you need to look at the official rubrics and a lot of sample answers. This will give you the understanding of how ETS grades essays and spoken answers. You're going to compare your essays, compare your spoken responses to samples that give grades for those samples. And the answers that are most similar to yours, well, you're going to use the grades of those responses. Okay, for the next week, in week 3, we have some similar goals. The first goal is, again, vocabulary. And we're going to try to go through the next 4 decks of Magush's TOEFL vocabulary flashcards. This will finish the vocab flashcards. The second goal for this week is a full-length test. But this time, you're going to do the test all in one sitting. So you need 4 hours to sit and take a full test. You want it to be as much like the real test as possible. So, if possible, it should be on a computer, either with the CD that comes with the official books or with Magoosh Online. Your focus for this test will be on timing. Make sure that you don't spend more time than you should. So for the reading section, if you have 3 passages, you should have a total of 60 minutes and no more. Do not take more time than you are allowed. Your third goal this week is to review all of your reading and listening answers that you got wrong on that practice test. And study related strategies. Find material, find blog posts on Magoosh or video lessons on Magoosh that explain strategies for those types of questions. So, for example, if you got a question that looks like an inference question in the reading section wrong, find details about those inference questions and the types of wrong answers that appear in inference questions so you know how to avoid them. And your fourth goal this week will be to edit all of your essays and spoken answers from weeks 1 and 2. You already graded them last week. You graded your responses from week 1. Now you're going to edit them. So this means making them better. If you thought maybe, oh, my essay was a grade 3 essay, how can you make it a grade 4 essay? Edit them to make them as good as possible so they would get higher grades. For your spoken answers, simply give the same answer again, but with better pronunciation or more details or better timing. Whatever caused problems the first time, try to avoid them this time. In the 4th week, we're going to have 4 more goals. This is the final week of the study schedule. You're almost there. The first goal is to review your vocabulary. No new vocabulary at this point. We're not going to be studying new vocabulary a week before the test. It's not a good idea. Instead, make sure you know the vocabulary that you already studied. Review it. There were 600 words in the Magoosh TOEFL vocabulary app. Make sure you know as many of them as possible. Goal 2 is another practice test in parts. So this will be very similar to the practice test that you did in week 2. You're going to take it piece by piece and carefully review every wrong answer. Don't worry about timing for this practice test, and you don't need to complete it in 1 day. You can take 2 days or 3 days, and you can do it out of order if you choose. For example, the writing part first. Prioritize the areas that are causing you trouble and spend the most time reviewing wrong answers in those sections. Goal 3 is another full-length practice test all in one sitting. This will be your final practice test before test day. So you're going to take a 4-hour practice test a few days before your test to make sure that you know the whole experience very well before the real thing. And your 4th goal is to rest. Do not complete that practice test the day before the full test, the real test. Your final goal is to make sure that you are rested and comfortable and happy and prepared on test day. So do not cram. Do not take a practice test the day before your real test. Don't study vocabulary the day before your real test. Be happy, be relaxed, enjoy yourself. Go outside, see friends. Don't go out drinking late at night, though. That's not a good idea either. And when you're actually taking your test, good luck from Magoosh. And finally, of course, you can get practice questions, explanation videos, video lessons, and more from TOEFL.magoosh.com. Happy studying.